Okay, thank you very much for your presentations. I have a question for Alessandro. Yeah, so it's a simple question. You said that you can send the geopositioning of the diver, but the position is from the buoy, not from the
Yes,
diver.
with
Yeah.
3 buoys, we can triangulate and
Okay.
have the,
That was my
That
question.
then
If you
is
only
an
have the
estimated-
communication, or if you can triangulate
yes.
and know the position, the exact position underwater of the diver.
with 3 buoys we can. And this is the next step. With 1 buoy, we have a geolocation of a diver. Obviously, if the diver surfaces, then it's a different story. So bye-bye missing divers, you see, if they are, because they can communicate with that. And at that stage, if the diver is on the surface, it's the diver, not the buoy, that transmits the data.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for Sandro, if that's okay. Sandro, I was really interested in your data from the first part of your talk, where you said that pre-dive exercise was associated with increased risk. I'm sure you're aware that.
No. That was running. I know what you're talking about the pre-dive exercise. That.
So it's not an increased risk. It is an increased risk, or it's not an increased risk?
Post-dive exercise for sure.
Yes.
Pre-dive exercise, depending on whether our Croatian friends are right or not.
Right. Well, yeah. Okay. No, I was just curious because, as you know, Alf Brubeck published a whole series of animal studies that showed that pre-dive exercise markedly reduced risk. And then since then, there's been 3 human studies that have all shown that pre-dive exercise at various points in the 24 hours prior to a dive reduced bubbles. That doesn't necessarily equate with risk of decompression sickness, but I was just curious because I thought you said that pre-dive exercise increased risk.
We said pre-dive strenuous exercise, fatigue, stress, and so on. A controlled pre-dive exercise of Wislus, Alf, and so on is a known factor, and I agree with you. So this is something that we need to keep investigating. That came out of the analysis of the questionnaires of the 40,000 of the publication.
Okay. Yeah. Anyone else?
I'm actually, now that you mentioned that, you know that Madden, one of the team of
microparticle guy.
Yes, actually studied also the very short interval pre-dive exercise.
Yes, I know. Yeah,
30 minutes, and that's very interesting. Actually, more than the 20
hours. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And Tom.
My question to Simon. Do I understand correctly that if you go out, feel the symptoms, simple symptoms of decompression disease, you just take more oxygen, go down till 10 meters. It's better to have a full face mask and stay there for 30 minutes.
Yep.
Right? Okay, cool. Thanks.
That's one way of doing it. You could stay. I mean, we don't have any databases of treatments of known outcome to define the perfect in-water recompression protocol. There's a bunch of them out there. If you dig into the literature, the Australian pearl divers had an approach. There's an approach that Jean-Eric Blateau has taught to various populations of indigenous sea harvesters in Asia. They're all different, but I think personally keeping it simple is good. And so the appeal of a simple descent to 10 meters and stay there for 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour, depending on what happens to your symptoms, and then come back up. Yeah. And you do it early, and you do it with the right people, with the right equipment. I just want to be clear about that. This is not something that the medical community is endorsing for widespread practice on any old dive boat. It's taken a lot to get us to the point where we will endorse it for the right people in the right circumstances. We don't want to ruin it by seeming to promote it for everyone. It's not for everyone.
Simon, a question following on from that. You said there's now this consensus document. Can you talk a little bit about what the reaction to that has been? Because we're very often reluctant to change, and no in-water recompression has been such a mantra for so long. What's been the feedback to that?
Well, I mean, that paper's been up there for 4 years. It didn't attract any letters to the editor. And I might add that committee was set up very purposefully to include experts, very experienced diving physicians from Australasia, North America, and Europe. So it represented a very wide spectrum of opinion from very sensible people who've seen a lot of decompression sickness. And I have not been approached by anyone who has any objections to it. And actually, at the end of the day, my argument would be, well, look, here are the data that support it. What we have now shown that we didn't have before is that very early recompression works. We have also shown from real data that a shorter, shallower recompression than what we can achieve in a chamber works if you do it early. Those pieces of information we didn't have 10 years ago when we were all saying, oh no, you mustn't do this. So what objective medical person in their right mind would object to us progressing this issue in the face of that new data? Does that make sense? And I think that's why we haven't had much pushback. I think people, it's very clearly laid out that there is evidence to support this new recommendation or this new endorsement. It's probably not, recommendation is very strong. This new endorsement of that approach. It's evidence-based. And that's what we're about, right? Trying to get evidence in our field is sometimes quite challenging, which is why all the stuff Sandro is doing is awesome. Gathering data in the field from divers who are actually diving. That's the next holy grail. Yeah.
My only concern about that, because in-water recompression is with us since ages.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
The point of making it evidence-based, and there's no doubt, it also implies that it has to be done properly.
Yes.
And this is my fear. This is because we have to convey the message very clearly to the diving community. Running the Dan Europe hotline, I'm too often confronted with people who do that
Not properly.
not properly.
Yeah, no, of course. But that's not a reason to not let people like Mark, who will do it properly, that's not a reason to hold them back. It's a reason to do better education and to try and make sure that the wrong people don't do it and the right people do it. And I mean, I in my technical diving career in remote places like Bikini Atoll have used in-water recompression probably 6, 8 times, maybe, always very successfully, always done properly. And I just think it's wrong that the medical community would continue to say, oh, no, you can't do that, because I'm worried that someone who's not properly qualified might see you doing that and think that they can too. Our job is to make sure that we educate people properly.
And to educate those who can do it, because
Correct.
there is a community that can do so. And that is the technical diving community that are ready to invest in equipment, in organization, in risk assessment and management, and are frequently diving in remote areas where reaching a chamber in 3 hours is a dream.
It's a dream, yeah.
So, and they may not have the U-boat or the diving vessel with the bell and the chamber on top. So,
One question for Alessandro. That it's a very, very simple question, but it's what I like to know as a diver. When do you think we will have the device that's is the result of the investigation that you are, the work that you are doing now. And if possible, without the 3 buoys. When do you think that in my lifetime span, I will be able to dive with something that will transmit all that data and that will allow me to be located underwater?
The system is already functional. The sensorized top is already on the market. The dive sense, that is the dive computer companion, because we don't want to have another dive computer. This is what I call the dive computer companion, because it analyzes the dive data according to a dive risk analysis pattern that puts together also the physiological data. The system is already functional, actually. The dive sense and the dry part works well. The only thing is that we have now a simplified data collector on the sensor, because the white one you saw is not yet compatible with compression. And since it has lithium batteries inside, we are a bit afraid. So we are now making it water and pressure proof. It's done in these very days. The other simplified part that doesn't monitor electrocardiogram, but monitors breath rate, heart rate, and HRV is already. So we are, frankly, we are simply waiting to industrialize it, because the system is ready, and we hope that, or let's say the plan is to put it on the market in 2023, on Dan Europe's 40th anniversary.
In the location part, the
The
location component, locating the diver underwater, is there any idea of how long will it take to get something
No,
like that on the market?
That also works. That also works. If you have the buoy, if you have the full system, so you can have an individual system without the transmission, and that would allow you to know all these data as soon as you surface. We are working on a possible feedback from the dive sense to the computer, so to suggest a possible different ascent, because the system allows for that. The system can estimate, based on your dive time and depth, the best ascent. Obviously, if we also have some data from some physiological data, the estimation might be better, but this is something that is yet to be studied. Obviously, if you have a very stressed diver with an extremely high breath rate or heart rate or so on, there are reasons to suggest a more prudent ascent, but this is just a matter of common sense at the moment. Nevertheless, the system would allow for that. So it would allow to also guide you to the best ascent, so to reach the surface with a tolerable supersaturation. The other thing that we are also focusing on is the fact that most current computers and current algorithms actually stop computing at the end of the last stop. So the surfacing time from 5 or 3 meters is almost never computed. And we calculated the change of estimated supersaturation after leaving the last stop, when a diver could say, okay, I'm finished, I can boom up. And the actual supersaturation, if you do boom up, or if you ascend slowly, and you can have big surprises there, because you think you come up with an 80 and you find yourself with a 93, for example. So this is part of what the system is intended to do, to advise the diver as to a suggested best ascent based on these parameters only. The wearable, the top, is already on the market as well. The buoy that you saw is the final prototype, so it's ready to. So yes, in our lifetime, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions for Sandro and Simon?
I have one more question for Sandro. Sandro, in your data, you suggested that for an equivalent bubble load, women were at higher risk of decompression sickness. Is that because they're just more likely to report it? Or do you think there's
Maybe.
Because-
It's,
because a few years ago, Marguerite St. Leger Douse,
yeah.
she showed that women actually had lower risk of decompression sickness, probably because they're just more sensible in their diving approach. And I just wonder whether what you're seeing is a willingness of women to report their symptoms.
It may be, well, a factor of less denial.
Yeah,
by-
less denial,
by
yeah,
women,
yeah.
yes.
I just wondered about that, yeah. Okay, there was one question there.
Okay, probably the last question of the day. I was just wondering what else is happening at the forefront of hyperbaric medical research
Yeah.
these years that we haven't covered, or whether there was something that you would like to do or see within the next 5-10 years.
Oh, Peter, that's, that's a very long answer. I mean, there's so many things. All I'll say is that I'll reiterate the comment I made the other day that one of the really exciting things about diving medicine is that there's still lots of great questions to be answered. So all the young, keen dive people that I see that Arno has gathered here, if they've got an academic aspiration to do research in diving medicine, there are so many things that we can still do with relatively doable studies that don't require huge amounts of money and will be a hell of a lot of fun to do. And that's all I'm going to say, because we could talk for ages about, what we'd like to do. There's lots of stuff.
As far as I see it, my goal and my team's goal is to try and better understand the mechanics of human response to decompression stress. Not only based on estimated supersaturation, but considering bubbles and estimated supersaturation as a trigger of something else that we still need to understand better. So this is my goal at the moment.